morning, colleagues, and welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Risk Management Committee. In welcoming you, can I also afford a particular welcome to the PwC External Audit team who are here today to discuss with us the External Audit Plan for 2013-14. The representatives are Lindsay Patterson, Engagement Leader for External Audit, and Tony Levinson, who's the Engagement Manager. Robert Barr, colleague, unfortunately, is not able to be present. So welcome to you both, ladies. We'll hear further from you when we come to item number 4 on the agenda. Look forward to that. Can I also remind you, colleagues, that the meeting is, in fact, being recorded and will be made available for public consumption, if that's the correct phrase, for if anyone that so wishes. Having given the health warning, for want of a better term, first item on the agenda, Sederunt and apologies. Any apologies? Okay.
Good morning. I have apologies from Councillors Collins, Councillor Dites and Councillor Gilroy, and 8 members present today.
Thanks very much indeed. Item number 2 on the agenda, colleagues, declarations of interest. Any member, any declarations wish to raise? Okay, thank you. Item number 3 then is the minutes of the meeting of 10th of December 2013. They're for approval. Can I see?
Happy to approve, Chair.
Okay. Vice Chair and Councillor Stittler. Okay. Item number 4 then, and this is the report of the External Audit Plan for 2013-14. It's a report by the Director of Chief Executive Services. Service. And in the appendix to the report is the work plan that the Council's external auditors, PricewaterhouseCoopers, intend to undertake for the 2013-14 financial year, which is based on their analysis of the risks facing the Council. We've been asked to discuss the work plan today and the risks on which the work plan is predicated. And this will hopefully give us an understanding of the control environment in operation at the Council and of the assurances available from external audit staff. The plan sets out 4 basic headings. First one is the responsibilities of the external auditor and the Council, the respective responsibilities. The second one is the timetable which is proposed to be followed. The third one is the reporting arrangements for the work. And the fourth one is a list of outputs which is expected to be delivered as part of the audit of the financial year ending, or which will end on 31st of March 2014. Again, Lindsay, I would welcome your colleague Tony and yourself and say that we look forward to working with you and your team. And I would now ask you to introduce and to speak to the plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to do is just take you quite briefly through our audit plan for the year. I'm happy to take any questions as we go, or indeed at the end of that. If I move into page 1 of the document, we set out basically the purpose of the audit plan, which is really just to let you know how we plan to conduct our audit for the year. And this is something which would come back to the audit committee each year as part of the audit process. Page 2, we highlight our approach, which is around having the right people involved in the audit, taking an approach which is appropriate to the local government environment, and the use of technology in that regard. In terms of the audit team itself, Tony and Robert Barr represent continuity from the prior year, and that helps to ensure an efficient and smooth audit process for staff. I've taken over as engagement leader from Cameron Reevy, who retired at the end of October, but I do bring with me quite significant local government experience, so I do understand the context in which you operate. In terms of the approach that we take, if I move on to the next page, it's very much about understanding the risks that you as a council face, but then looking at those risks in the context of your financial statements. So we wouldn't look at every risk within the organisation. We would basically look at the risks which relate or have a financial impact. So in that regard, we've identified 5 key areas of risk that we'll be looking at in some detail during the course of the audit. And these are set out on page 5 of our document, which I think is page 4 in terms of your referencing. Sorry, page 17, apologies. The first 3 risks that we've highlighted there, one around the risk of management override of controls, risk of fraud and revenue recognition, and risk of fraud and expenditure recognition. These are all significant risks which auditing standards require us to consider for every single entity that we audit. and there are areas that we're asked to look at in some detail. And we've set out in Appendix A our approach to each of these risks and the particular focus that we'll place on those. The other two areas are areas of more elevated risk. They're not as high as the ones I've just mentioned, but around looking at the accounting treatment for equal pay claims to ensure that we're comfortable with the provisioning that's in the financial statements. And then finally, how you've accounted for the transfer of the police and fire resources as at 1st of April last year. So again, these are areas where there is potential either judgment or it's a new area, so therefore there's a bit more focus for us. We undertake our audit in accordance with materiality. So our audit opinion is basically to say that the accounts show a true and fair view, but that's within the confines of materiality. Materiality we calculate based upon your expenditure for the year, and we use a figure of 2% of expenditure, which is what is driving that overall materiality figure that we've got there. We then reduce that and consider anything over just over 8 million, which would be material in the context of our audit opinion. We've highlighted there a de minimis posting level of 500,000. Again, auditing standards require us to report back to you, as those charged with governance, any unadjusted items that we identify through the audit process. So any issues that we've identified that management don't then reflect in the financial statements. However, we're not required to bring everything to your attention, and if it's below that de minimis level, we don't need to bring it back to your notice. I suppose I just wanted to pause at this point. I've used the figure of £500,000, which is calculated in accordance with the standards, but really just to confirm that as an audit committee, you are comfortable with that level. But I suppose in that context, just to say that we will look at the totality of unadjusted items, and if there are a number of issues around the same things, we would definitely bring that back to your attention. But this is there as a guide, and I was quite keen to get input to that. Do you want me to pause here?
Thanks very much indeed, Lindsay. I would open it up, colleagues, to debate, to discussion. Councillor Bell, you wanted to come in?
Chair, I'm not sure we've obviously covered that. It's on the audit fees. Do you want to, that's okay.
A de minimis level of £500,000. I think I'd quite like £500,000. But would you say you identify that? Would you pass that to our internal audit to investigate, or what view would you take on it? You wouldn't just ignore it, I take it.
If we were to identify items that we felt required adjustment in the financial statements that were below 500,000, first of all, we would raise them with management so that they were aware that there was this issue. If we identified several items below £500,000, which perhaps suggested that there was a systematic issue, maybe it was in relation to accruals, again, we would raise that as a generic point within our management letter, and again seek management action. That may be in terms of internal audit might do some work around that, or else management might do some. So we would report it in its generic sense. We just wouldn't necessarily have to report every single individual amount below that £500,000 threshold.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
That satisfied the response, thank you. Any other member? Vice Chair?
Chair, I think I've got some confidence in what the auditors are actually saying, in that if there was something below the 5 or several issues before the 500,000 mark, then that would be raised with us as well. I think that's the right approach, so therefore I'm happy with that particular remit.
Any other comments, questions? If not, then colleagues will move to the recommendation, which is sorry, my apologies.
No.
Forgive me.
No, there are a couple of other points that I wanted to make in the context of our plan and just to bring to your attention. In particular, as we move into page 20 and 21 of the document, where we talk about the risk of fraud and set out the responsibilities of management, of ourselves as auditors, but also you as those charged with governance. And what I wanted to flag here, I suppose, again, is if any members of the committee have any concerns regarding fraud, My contact details are contained within the plan, and by all means, please raise any issues that you have. I'm more than comfortable to take anything that you have. In terms of the next couple of pages, we highlight the team. As I say, contact details are there, and there is continuity with both Tony and Robert, who were both been involved in the past. Audit fees on page 11, we've set out the fee that we've agreed with management for the year. The audit fee that is there is a range set by Audit Scotland, and we work within that range to agree a fee with management. The figure that is sitting there at £390,000 probably causes people to take a bit of a sharp intake of breath. It does look very high, but perhaps if I could give some extra context around that, it includes VAT. It also includes a central recharge that Audit Scotland retains, so PwC does not get that full amount of money. So for the core audit, the work we deliver on the ground is considerably lower than that figure. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed by Audit Scotland to disclose how much their central administration part is, so I can't give any more details than that.
Talk about potential fraud, Chair. I think we've just hit one right in the head.
Careful now. We don't want to fall out with our audit team before we even start.
The rest of the document is simply additional information around our approach and the risks, etc. So I just thought I'd close there, and happy to take any further questions.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's very helpful. Councillor Bell?
I think you've clarified a number of points here regarding the audit fees, but obviously it's good news, a 4% decrease, but obviously there could have been overinflated charges to start with, because a lot of chartered accountants, you can usually screw them down. But regarding the £390,000, where are we with other local authorities? Like other local authorities could be 500,000, or are we the middle of the charges, or over the bottom end?
The range set by Audit Scotland is very much determined upon the size of the local authority, and therefore there are other local authority fees which are significantly higher than you have. Equally, there are others which are below what you've got. And I think the other thing which I should have mentioned is you have a pension scheme included within that audit fee, and that's not universal in terms of other local authorities either. So that slightly inflates your fee relative to other authorities of a similar size.
Satisfied with the response, Councillor Bell? Good, delighted to hear that. Any other members, any comments, questions? Councillor McKee, and then you, Vice Chair.
I'd better come back. Although I said it in a jocular fashion, when you think about somebody is getting money out of this payment, it's no being retained by PricewaterhouseCoopers. There's another group who take money out of there, and nobody knows, well, they'll not tell us how much it is. I think that must give us cause for concern. It's still a public body at the end of the day, and we should be entitled to know, or the general public should be entitled to know how much they're taking off each council for doing nothing, or just getting PricewaterhouseCoopers to do the work. I think it is a wee bit of liberty.
I suppose there's a couple of points that I could make in Audit Scotland's defence. Obviously, their accounts are subject to audit as well, so that would be reviewed, and they are subject to external audit. So the use of the funds that they receive from the local government arena or other audited bodies throughout Scotland are then subject to audit, on which there will be an audit opinion. So I hope that will give you some comfort in terms of the use of the money that you are putting into Audit Scotland. And I think as well, in terms of, they don't, in all fairness, get us to do absolutely everything in terms of the audit. They do produce guidance, they do produce technical bulletins, and they do undertake some of the value for money and best value work. So there are some very specific parts of the audit process in terms of the wider scope audit in Scotland that Audit Scotland actually directly do. So it would be remiss of me not to point that out to you today.
Well, I think that's an extremely helpful response. I mean, I do take the point that members are making about what's seen to be a very large fee, but I wouldn't want to get us into the situation of being accused of knowing the cost of everything and the value of nothing. I think there are inherent dangers in that. Vice Chair.
Thanks, Chair. If I can sort of go off the cost side of things and get back to the actual risks side of things. Obviously, when you do audits, you've got information that you get, documentation, you do interviews, observation. How important is the Section 95 officer for this particular part of the audit process?
I mean, I think the Section 95 officer role is key to a lot of what we do, his knowledge, experience, etc., and how he operates. His finance team, the finance function, and the controls they've got in place are very important to this whole process. And we see him as a key part of the audit for us.
Any other comments or questions, colleague? Well, can I now turn without being accused of being precipitate to the recommendations then, if I may? We're being asked in section 2 of the report, the covering report, to note and to comment on the external audit plan for 2013-14. I think we've done that. Would you agree? Okay. Lucy, would you care to give us a summary of the comments which have been raised as part of the debate and which will be included as part of the minute of the meeting, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've had a presentation from the external auditors. Various issues have been raised. I'll just sum up those points. Vice Chair has noted that there's confident with the auditor's presentation. They've clarified the points about the audit fee. And one of the reasons for this is because we have a pension scheme in place which reflects the higher fee. Concern was also raised about not knowing how much was being taken off for each councillor. And
What essentially we're saying is that we've noted in the terms of the report that the proposals contained in the plan, and we're approving these insofar as our interests are concerned, subject to various points having been made, which we'll include in the minutes. That be acceptable, colleagues? Okay, thank you. Lindsay, you indicated that you'd like to leave after this item. Please do so. Next item on the agenda, colleagues, is item number 5. It's CCS risk management update. Community and Customer Services risk management update, and it's a report by the Director of Community and Customer Services, which sets out the progress which is being made in managing risks etc. within CCS department or CCS service. This committee's role in the process is to provide effective scrutiny of the risk management arrangements and to ensure the adequacy of the framework for these. A number of risks have been identified within the CCS business plan for 2012 to 2015, and lead officers have risk assessed a number of key projects. An overview of these risks can be found in the appendix to the report. The CCS committee, the recently established CCS committee, will review the high-level risks in June 2014 as part of the business plan refresh process. Mr. Haswell, as Director of CCS, will be able to answer any questions for us. Do you have anything to add to the report before we open it to members' debate, Mr. Haswell?
No, Chairman, thank you very much. I have colleagues with me, Mary Telford-Jammy and Richard Greaveson, who are leads in risks in CCS, will answer the difficult questions.
I'm tempted to say, how do you spell Leeds? And Mr. Grieveson knows exactly what I mean by the question. But on that basis, then, can I open it up to members for comment, questions, etc.? Councillor Drybrough.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm just looking at the risk CCS 05, which is service impacts from the emerging skill gaps. And I've looked down the actual what we would do for the potential effect and what controls or mitigations are in action place. What I don't see in there is any succession planning going on, and I just want some confidence that succession planning is being taken as part of that emerging skill gap issue, and perhaps something that could be added to the risk reference as well.
Absolutely, sir. Succession planning is something that we are looking at effectively in CCS. In fact, I think Richard will confirm it. At a one-to-one earlier this week, I asked him who would take over if he was run over by a bus. I've had a reasonable response to that, but we do acknowledge that we are reducing the staff complement, and that means that we do have to look and ensure that there are people who are competent and able to take over. And I'm confident that we have a management team at a senior manager level and indeed at a principal officer level who are all stepping up to the plate, and I would assure you that we are looking at succession planning.
Yes, indeed, sir.
Thanks. But I think it should be within the context of the page itself. So if that can be put in, that's fine.
I think that's a very helpful suggestion. You don't wish to add anything, Richard? Yeah, you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, just to support Director's comments, we mentioned the Leadership Development Programme in the text. We've also got management training programmes underway as well with our senior and principal officers that are all involved in that initiative just now, which absolutely contribute towards the succession planning agenda. So again, I'm confident to reaffirm the Director's comments that we're well placed just now in terms of succession planning.
Thanks very much indeed. Councillor Witts.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking specifically at the risk reference CCS 02 on page 42, which is with reference to achieving income targets or not. I would like to ask is it not a wee bit unrealistic in that the target for is shown as the likelihood of it not achieving the target being diminished, particularly in view of the fact that one of our major facilities, DG1, is going to go into Purda this summer, and from that point of view, I would suggest that perhaps there is a risk of income not achieving our income targets.
Can I just say that these are the risks, the current risks for this current year. We will be starting the process of refreshing the business plan just shortly, and as part of that process, we will be reviewing these risks that are within the business plan, and that's one of these that we will be, revisiting to see whether the risks need to be elevated and the targets readjusted.
Suitably reassured, Councillor Witts. Thank you. Thanks very much for that. Any other comments, questions, input? Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. It's CCS 03, Policy and Strategy Development Objectives not being met. And I think I raised an issue at the seminar in respect of antisocial behaviour. While we do not deliver the service, we are responsible for the strategic approach and indeed the policy setting in terms of this. I've waited now from last July for a review of the strategic plan and the policy, i.e. the practice in place, and I believe that is still to go to the DGFirst committee. It's the policy, the strategic development and objectives that are set in there in terms of the practice that we would expect from the operators in terms of the delivery of service and that it meets target dates, KPIs that we would set, at least I hope we would set, in terms of the delivery of that, where cases are going on. It's been well reported in the papers, the length and breadth of Dumfries and Galloway, that it does not seem we are addressing the issue of antisocial behaviour within a reasonable time set in the KPI. The risk to this is phenomenal, and I could go into it all day. I'm just wondering where we are with this issue in terms of CCS as the Commissioner.
Well, obviously that primarily, and I'm not trying to elide, answering your question, let me make that clear, Councillor Scobie, that primarily, of course, would be an issue in the first instance for the service, but I think it would be helpful, in fact, if you could give such response as you feel appropriate within the parameters of this committee today to the legitimate points which Councillor Scobie has raised, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Certainly in terms of the community safety strategy and the commission thereof, there are ongoing monitoring arrangements in place between the client and the commissioner, if you like, and the department delivering that commission. There will be a detailed community safety report coming to the CCS committee in April, which will touch on a number of these areas. But just to give Councillor Scobie some assurances that that piece of work is ongoing, and specifically in relation to antisocial behaviour and the other elements that he and I have been in discussion on for quite some time.
Do you wish to come back, Councillor Scobie?
Absolutely, Chair. And for a considerable time, could almost be 2 and coming on to 3 years. That issue has been, and I addressed my point to the Commissioner, where the Commissioner then commissions the service deliverer, being DGFirst. Therefore, I would hope that we would have an input into the strategic approach and indeed the practices that we would be monitoring. Again, Richard refers to a report coming forward in April, and only this week I sat with a number, including a number of bodies within the council departments, including the police, and I do not see this coming forward. And as a commissioner, as the committee responsible for the commissioning, I would not see it being satisfactory in terms of the time that this is taking to review the strategic approach and indeed the practices that are happening therein.
Well, can I suggest, and again, I mean, you and I have discussed this on an award basis, Councillor Scobie, can I suggest, in fact, that the appropriate forum in the first instance, to have this debated and hopefully thrashed out and resolved would be the CCS committee in April. Like myself, you're a member of that committee, and I'm sure we can employ the opportunity gainfully. Okay? Thanks.
I'm not sure if it's okay, Chair. That's 2 months again from the time that I've been speaking about, and this goes back years. But there's nothing I can do in terms of that. It seems to be April's when a report's coming forward.
Well, no, the point I'm making is that it's the CCS committee that's the appropriate forum. And the points you're making, I can certainly relate to in an award capacity. And I think that committee meeting, the next committee meeting, as Mr. Greason has said, would be the appropriate locus and forum, to consider these issues and to take on board the concerns. Okay, right. Any other comments or Councillor Prentice? Vice Chair, can we indulge an elderly gentleman, please?
Is that me or George that you're talking about, elderly?
Give way, please.
Just coming on to Appendix 2 of the actual report, we're looking at the community customer service projects. Maybe it's just a question to the officers that, are there any of these projects that are going to sort of bite us on the proverbial if we don't, raise it with the respective committee in each of these and whoever delivers these particular projects? Is there any in real danger of not actually being met?
I think through you, Chair, that where we've identified that there is an appropriate level of risk, that's why those projects feature in the plan, and that's how we've been able to identify the proactive approach to put in place control measures to give us all, members and officers, some assurances that we've got those risks that are being managed and are being measured, and the appropriate control measures and actions are being taken. So I'm confident through you, Chair, that that's not the case, and we're managing these risks accordingly.
Councillor Prentice.
Thank you very much, Chair. Archie actually more or less asked the question I was going to ask, but I was actually going to ask specifically in Lower Burn Hall, what are the risks involved within the Lower Burn Hall situation, and where are we with that situation at the moment?
Thank you, Chair. I think that there are two specific issues here in terms of the risks associated with the building as it currently sits, in terms of ensuring that the department fulfils its responsibilities to ensure that it's secure and wind and watertight, and as an asset we are treating it appropriately. And secondly, there will be a report coming to members again in the March Policy and Resources Committee in regard to the Loban Hall and its potential future use or not. And again, the risks associated with that project will be reported through the Policy and Resources Committee.
Thank you. You want to come back? No. Okay. Thanks. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, likewise, Chair, on Appendix 2, page 49 of 112 is the first point I'll make in terms of integration of customer service centres, registration libraries within localities. And indeed, Chair, you know, the one in Stranraer has ongoing problems, and it's the risks associated with that in terms of council reputation in being able to deliver the service that the public enjoyed in the past, to the integration of these services where the groups, voluntary groups, appear to be being squeezed, if you like, for want of a better term, in terms of the letting space they had in the past and no longer enjoy the same letting space. Indeed, Chair, I believe you're in discussion on a similar theme in terms of village halls. So it's the risk associated with that in terms of the council's reputation. Similarly, on page 51, and it's the welfare reform policy development and the risks associated here, notwithstanding the archbishops yesterday, signing, again for want of a better term, or making representation rather than a petition, making representation in terms of the whole welfare reform Act, and indeed the punishment the UK government, the condemned government, are inflicting on the people. The risk to this one is the council picking up on the upper tribunal cases that have gone before the upper tribunal, and that we are applying the correct decisions and reflecting that in the people who suffer just now under the bedroom tax.
Chairman, if I can maybe pick these up, I'll take the second one first. In terms of welfare reform, yes, we do regularly monitor what's happening at a legal level in relation to welfare reform issues. We are one of the few local authorities in the UK who are not inflicted with the so-called bedroom tax, in that everyone is on the appropriate benefits. We actually go to people. We have a very, very good communication strategy in terms of the welfare reform, and our members are well aware that the Welfare Reform Subcommittee is at the forefront of everything that happens. It is one of our council's policies and commitments that to deal with poverty, and we are proposing an anti-poverty strategy. So I can assure Councillor Scobie that we have identified this as a risk, quite rightly, but we are mitigating against that risk and taking matters forward. Insofar as the integration is concerned, the CCS committee approved at its meeting earlier this week, or was it last week? Earlier this week, a full communication and engagement plan in relation to integration going forward. The issue in Stranraer, to which Councillor Scobie alludes, is currently being dealt with by officers of this council. So we are addressing the risk. We don't make light of the risk. There is a risk there, and Councillor Scobie is quite right. The risk is to the council's reputation as a local authority. But we are addressing those, and members have approved a plan in terms of communication and engagement with the public who use our integrated services or will be asked to use integrated services in the future.
In other words, the issues, without sounding smug or complacent, because that would be the last thing that would be appropriate, the issues are being dealt with in the appropriate forums and will be dealt with rigorously and effectively. That's the assurance that you're giving us, Mr. Haswell.
Yes, sir.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, if I could go back, Chair, and I recognise that indeed we do as an authority ensure that, you know, discretionary housing payment is made to people who have suffered under the bedroom tax, and indeed that is further mitigated next year once the Scottish Government gets sorted out in terms of what they can do with the UK in terms of lifting the cap on DHP, or indeed another means of making the payment to the registered social landlord. My point is to the upper tribunal that Mr. Haswell alluded to there in terms of we cover it through DHP, but it's the criterion of bedroom, what is classified.
Councillor Scobie, you know, I have no wish, you know, in the slightest to interrupt you or to appear to be disrespectful to you. The points you're making are valid points, but, you know, they're not for this forum today. The point I would make, in fact, is that they're put to the CCS Committee, Welfare Rights Subcommittee, or indeed the Housing Subcommittee. And rest assured, you know, you'll get the support, I think, from a significant majority of members of the council, you know, to do exactly that in the appropriate forums. So I would ask that we come back to the issues in relation to this particular report before us today and the Audit Risk Management Committee, and we take it from there. And I'd be grateful for your cooperation in that regard.
Come back, Chair. I take the point you're making that it will be the business of the Welfare Reform Subcommittee to deal with. What I'm asking is the risk in terms of people making an appeal where it may not be necessary to make that appeal if we at the Council recognises the upper tribunal findings. That's my point. It's the risk associated with this committee, not to deal with the business, the item of business, but the risk associated with that, and people now who have appealed where it may not be necessary to go to stage 1 tribunal where it's recognised as to what the criterion is on a bedroom.
Mr. Haswell, do you wish to respond?
In terms of risks, sir, this council follows the law. I ensure that this council follows the law. That's my job.
And if I may resort to the old truism, it's infinitely preferable to follow the law than to make the law. But as I say, right. Any further comments? No, I think the points are perfectly legitimate and valid points. You know, but as I say, let's deal with them in the appropriate forums in the first instance. Any further comments? Any further questions? Can we move then on that basis to the recommendations, which is in paragraph 2. Exactly so. And the first one is that members are asked to note the risk management arrangements that are currently in place for community and customer services and to make comment as necessary. We've noted them. We've discussed various aspects of these. I take it that we feel we've got sufficient assurances, as it were, that these represent an adequate standard that the council are entitled to expect. Would that be the case, colleagues? Okay. And the second one is to agree to the improvement actions being proposed at sections 3.12 to 3.14 of the report. Again, colleagues, would that be acceptable? Okay. Thanks very much to you. Moving on then, next item on the agenda is item number 6. This is a report which sets out the risk management update in relation to the Chief Executive Service, and it's a report by Mr. Haswell in his capacity as Director of Chief Executive Service. The report advises of the progress with risk management in that particular service. And again, colleagues, I would remind you that our role is to provide effective scrutiny of the risk management arrangements and to ensure the adequacy of the framework for these. Chief Executive Services has both a corporate and a departmental lead for risk management, thereby ensuring that risk management is part of the departmental activities and that any risk actions are managed. Mr Haswell, do you have anything further to add to the report at this stage?
Nothing, Chairman, thank you very much. I'm quite happy to take questions.
Okay then, colleagues, I'll open it up for debate. Vice Chair.
Thanks. There's a couple of points on the risks in CES 02, which is page 61. We failed to respond adequately to the disruptive event. I'm sure at the seminar members were made aware by Martin Ogilvie about the work that's going about business disruption and things like that. But looking at the target, as this is a sort of continuous improvement setup, the target of that is in this case, I think, perhaps a bit low, it would be hard to reach that particular area. I think looking at what we've got for mitigating against them and things like that is fine. However, I think the target should be set a little higher than that, because the impact of that business disruption will be much higher than what it is at the moment. The other issue is certainly on page 63, 67 and 69, looking at last year's grid, there is no set mark on that particular risk grid. Just wonder why that is.
Thanks, Chairman. I'll take the second point first. Councillor Driver is quite right. We, at our last business plan review, identified additional risks in CES, and those are the risks where we did not identify those risks in previous years. And last year, we've identified them this year. We have a target for next year, and we'll review them when we come to review our business plan in June, sir. In terms of the target, I think business continuity management, quite frankly, we have done it to death. We have resilience plans across the council. We had a test recently where we had a complete failure of our computer system. I think if I hadn't told members, they wouldn't have known about it. That's how good it is. We have all the backups that we need. I do take Councillor Driver's point. I'm not going to be complacent about this. I'm quite happy to go away and review this risk and bring it back to members when we review the business plan. I'm not complacent about it, but I think we now have dedicated staff who look at resilience, contingency planning and risk management, and we have got a very reasonable system in place, touch wood, but I will review it and come back to the members on it, sir.
Thank you, that's helpful. Any other comments? No? Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it's just on page 63 of Appendix 2. You know, and it's in we lose the confidence of elected members in terms of the member officer protocol. Mr. Haswell and I have been in communication. Again, it's the risk associated with this, you know, in terms of how departments work, how they work to the member officer protocol, members speaking to officers of the council, and so forth and so on. Again, I could go on, and it's really to maintain the confidence of the elected members to have replies timiously to correspondence, and indeed that members are able to speak to officer of the council, and the email is not an obstacle used so that members can't speak to it. It's the risk associated with the confidence of elected member and members.
Thank you. Mr. Haswell, do you wish to respond to that?
Councillor Scobie has indicated that he and I are actually in correspondence with that specific item. We have brought forward a number of areas where we are taking action to manage risks. Some of the issues that Councillor Scobie has raised with me relate to individuals, and I'd prefer not to go into them in a meeting, but I do accept that there are issues and we're addressing those. I don't think that we could put in a risk register how we're going to address those. I think Councillor Scobie would accept that.
Can I come back to you, Mr. Haswell, then, on the basis that I take it that, you know, that this ongoing dialogue you're having with Councillor Scobie is part of your corporate involvement in risk management, and if in fact it's to be taken to a decision-making forum on the back of it, which forum will that be? Policy and Resources?
We have a subcommittee which is currently looking at various constitutional documents, and I've given Councillor Scobie an assurance that the member officer protocol is one of the documents that we will review once that subcommittee, which I think is chaired by the deputy leader, resumes. It was stood down for a couple of months to allow the budget process to be developed. I understand it's to meet in mid-March, and I've given Councillor Scobie an assurance that these documents will be looked at in particular at that time.
Thank you, that's helpful. You wish to come back, Councillor Scobie? No, thanks very much. Vice Chair.
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. Again, it comes back to page 65, which is failure to ensure all departments comply with legislation, and looking at the risk matrix again, there is no change in the risk matrix. Does that mean that, obviously there's new legislation coming through all the time, it appears on the risk matrix that there's nothing in place to reduce the impact of a department not complying with legislation?
I think, sir, we have a number of controls in place at section 5 where we're endeavouring to manage the risk. The issue that I always have, and Councillor Geddes, you alluded to earlier on, we're looking to follow the law, not make the law. When new legislation comes out, there is advice given by legal officers to departments who are affected individually by the legislation, not just generic legislation, but specific legislation, for example, children and young persons and things like that. I think I'm being realistic. Somebody might take their eye off the ball and do something which isn't totally compliant with the law. That's human nature, and I don't think you can mitigate against that other than try and give good advice. I am also looking at the level of legal service we have within Dumfries and Galloway Council, and I think I will be coming back to members to suggest that there are areas of the law that we might be able to benefit from doing some spending to save. But that will come back to the Policy and Resources Committee in due course.
Thank you, Mr Hassel. Do you wish to come back, Vice Chair?
No, I think the Mr Hassel was absolutely right. You can't do anything about human error at the end of the day, depending on what legislation is actually going to be in place. Obviously, continuous improvement is something I mentioned before, and legislation does change, and if there's something that can be changed to help the council, then albeit, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Witts.
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at Appendix 2. What is the risk? Don't communicate effectively. Page 67. I was wondering if it would not be useful to have within paragraph 3 something about the effectiveness of the council's website, because I must admit, although I am a bit of a technophobe, I find that certain aspects of the website are not very user-friendly, and I feel that if I feel that way, others who are less competent in dealing with these matters might be somewhat frustrated, and that would certainly be a risk in that the public would perceive that the council's communication systems in that area were not terribly effective.
Okay, Mr Haswell, you have to respond, please.
Thanks, Chairman. I can confirm that Councillor Witts will note that this is a new risk which we identified. We are working on the council's website at the moment. There are those who say it's very difficult to use. On the other hand, I have people who say what a wonderful website Dumfries and Galloway's got. I think it depends on the flavour of website you enjoy. But we are looking at the website, and we have a team of people actually working on that. And they are not technophobes, they are experts in website development.
Councillor Witts, you wish to come back?
I would be happy to discuss in greater detail what my particular areas of frustration are, and I wish to be helpful in this matter.
That's appreciated. Thank you. Any further comments, questions, etc.? Well, then, can we move to the recommendation? That's section 2 of the report. We're basically being asked to determine whether the risk management arrangements in this service are adequate and provide us with sufficient assurance. Would the answer to that be yes? Okay. Thanks very much indeed. Oh, Senate. Sorry. My Item number 7 is it's a risk management update in relation to DGFirst. It's a report by the Head of Technical Services, which advises of risk management progress within DGFirst. It's the third such report in cognizance of this committee's independent scrutiny role on the effectiveness of risk management within that particular service. DGFirst also had a lead in risk management, ensuring its part in departmental activities and management of risk actions. Its departmental management team have identified department risks which are included in its business plan and service team plans. My understanding is that we have James McDowell here to answer any questions from members. James, would you wish to make any further comments at this stage to the report?
Nothing, Chair. Happy to take any questions from members.
Thanks very much, James. Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 74, you know, the road service, a new risk register required, and when will the plan be developed? What's the timescale on that one? Because I'm quite concerned, you know, as an elected member, I reported a pothole back in the 19th of December, and it's actually been filled in 4 times since then, and the mechanism's wrong. We need to elected members need to know, well, obviously it's been dealt with in the correct way. A week later again, it was refilled. So we need to have some sort of risk register, because I've hit that pothole in my car, and the last time it cost me nearly £1,000 on a BMW alloy and a run flat, and I certainly don't want to be making a claim to the council, but we need these risks to be robust, and we need a programme to know that things have been developed in the right way. So what's the timescale on the new plan, the risk management plan on the road service?
Thank you, through you, Chair. It has to be redeveloped, the risk register, but they have one in place at this moment in time for the service, and they also look at each individual case on an individual basis as well, looking at risk. So, you know, that's a team plan risk register that's to be put in place, and not sort of individual cases where there's an actual, you know, risk register for each activity or each job that's undertaken by the roads and other services as well.
I'll maybe come back in there, Chair. It's
Sure.
when an elected member obviously makes a call to either the roads department or through EMS. EMS says the call has been dealt with X, Y, and Z. It may be not followed up for a period of time. The risk there, especially to other road users, there could be an accident involved. That's why we need a really robust plan.
Do you wish to add anything to your previous answer, James?
I could take the EMES request back and make sure it's resolved for you, Council.
I've got a lot of reservations about EMS.
I rather suspect you may not necessarily be on your own in that one, Councillor Bell. But the thing is, I would have to say, you know, without sort of straying beyond the parameters of today's meeting, the big issue, or the thing I like about EMS, for want of a better term, is that at least you get performance targets back. If you pick up the phone and do it as we used to do it, you didn't get any such performance targets, and by and large, you know, you'd bother, you know, sort of tracking it and running it to earth. That's not to say that EMS, you know, is all singing, all dancing and wonderful. I think like any other service, it could do with a bit of refinement, but, you know, obviously that's got to be done in the appropriate forum. Any other? Vice Chair.
Just looking at the partnership side of this on the 75, we've only got Lordburn Housing Association down. I mean, one of the risks, of course, is that partners at DGFirst actually work with don't deliver on the work plans. Now, that's a risk to, you know, the reputation of the council and things like that. What sort of things have you got in place to ensure that that is being mitigated against?
Just come back through you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree there that, you know, there is risk with our joint working arrangements, you know, and they're adequately put in place through our legal team along with DGFirst managers to make sure that there are legal documents there, you know, legal risk registers there in place before we undertake any activities. It's something that, you know, it's second nature to do that. So, and you're right, you know, we have others, there's urban housing and also Transerve is a new one, which...
I mean, the last full council, we discussed the blacklisting debate, and obviously if there's any contracts for DGFirst that go over a certain price, that would have to go out to tender. And I just want to make sure that the pre-questionnaire, the pre-qualification questionnaire has got them questions in them, Alex.
Chairman, through you, I can give the Vice Chair that assurance. That's not necessarily been dealt with through DGFirst. That's dealt with through the procurement team, and we check every contract that requires to go into Europe. I think the threshold's about 143k or something like that. So that is already in place, sir, yes, and we will be reporting back to you on that.
Councillor Scobie.
Just to echo, Chair, the sentiments expressed by my colleague here on the left in terms of EMIS and your point, where the good point you can make of EMIS is that you're at least able to record the performance. It's what you do with the performance after that concerns me, in terms of, and reference has been made to potholes, where you report it in EMIS, it's then put onto some system called Lagan or something, which I do not know or understand, nor do I profess to. But it's, what follows thereafter is the issue in terms of risk, where someone is still out there having reported. So I merely make the point.
Well, can I be of assistance to you, in that regard, without sounding patronising in the slightest? Because my understanding, in fact, is that there is a report coming back to CCS committee on the precise point you're making. What do we do on the back, with the performance data when we've got it? So it's a point which is certainly well made and will be well taken.
Chair, it worries me when you continually refer to there's reports coming forward, there's reports coming forward. I just wonder what we are doing. However, I'm sure there's an answer to that. Alex is quick to the microphone there to give me it. It's terms that comes back to elected members' confidence in the systems and the risk that's associated with that. Now, if it's anything to do with audit and risk, then that is something, that we can constantly hark back to. Yeah, we're getting a report on that, and we're getting a report on that, and as Nero fiddled, Rome burns, in that sense. So could I ask, Chair, in terms of STARS, and again, this is partnership with departments and the risks. But what it says, because STARS only last for the 6 weeks maximum, and it's that there are appropriate plans in place following STARS with other partner organisations and departments. That concerns me. It's not just the end at STARS and DGFirst. There's a follow-on in terms of risk. And similarly to the point being made by the Vice Chair, in terms of partnership working, and the risk in terms of that's going on out there just now is land transfer and land ownership. Who actually owns the land where complaints are coming in from members of the public, but, both sides are saying, and I know this is to be addressed before you come back and say, yeah, we're getting a graduate in the summer to look at this. This is going on just now in terms of the risk that nothing is done because nobody knows who owns the land. I dispute that in terms of, because we all know who owns the land and land transfer, but nobody seems to be able to clarify beyond doubt in terms of the legality.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Councillor Scobie, if I understand you correctly, you're giving vent to frustration, and I certainly don't criticise you for that, about what essentially are various operational issues, and you're quite right, they need to be addressed. The point I would make is that, that's not within the function and role and remit of this committee today, to debate these issues, because apart from anything else, we don't have sufficient information before us to do so. And in your reference, to reports being promised, well, the blunt fact of the matter is that these reports are in the pipeline at the moment and will be taken to the appropriate decision-making forums as soon as it's possible to do so. And I would like to think not only will they be taken there, but they will in fact be, the actions will be followed through and implemented in the back of these. And I think at that stage, once that's been done, this committee has a genuine and a legitimate locus and role to play as to assessing whether or not in fact these have been followed through properly, and the risk factors and the risk issues inherent and implicit in these are being adequately addressed to give us as elected members relevant assurance. Do you wish to add anything further, Mr. Haswell?
Sir, if I can maybe come forward, Councillor Scobie raised 3 specific issues. I think you've addressed the issue in the generality. Can I remind members that every monitoring report that goes to every service committee contains statistics and KPIs in relation to the development of the EMES. So it is monitored by the service committees. In terms of STARS is a specific issue relating to, as Councillor Scobie says, the first 6 weeks. That's the risk that the DGFirst management team need to assess, is making sure that STARS is operational and that there is a risk register there and that they are in a position to mitigate against risks of failure to deliver and things like that. In terms of the land transfer, there are specific issues. These are being addressed on an operational basis, as you've said, sir.
Okay, right. No further questions, no further comments? Right. Can we go to the recommendations then and to decide whether or not the risk management arrangements in DGFirst are adequate? We agree that they are and that we are satisfied with the content of the report before us today. Okay? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on then to the next item on the agenda. This is item number 8, and it deals with the Corporate General Health and Safety Policy of the Council. A revised General Health and Safety Policy is presented for approval and support for its dissemination. We're duty bound as an employer under Section 2, brackets 3 of the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974 to prepare and to revise as often as is appropriate a written statement of general health and safety policy with respect to the health and safety of employees and the organisation and arrangements for delivery of that policy. We must also ensure as part of that process that all employees are made aware of it. Our existing policy was last reviewed in December of 2009 and has now been reviewed and updated to take account of the changing needs of the Council and changes in the corporate health and safety team. The revised policy is before you today, colleagues. A policy document is detailed Appendix 1 to the report. It's been widely consulted upon and it's been approved by the Council's corporate management team in January of this year. The communication plan that we're being asked to approve is at Appendix 2. Sue White is with us today to speak to the report. Sue, do you have anything further to add at this stage?
Just a couple of things, if that's okay. Okay. Just to give you a reintroduction about the health and safety policy statement, further to what you said, please note that on page 79 on the actual statement intent itself, the overall aim for our council is to have a positive health and safety culture that is embedded within day-to-day business. We do actually demonstrate that through the departmental health and safety plans, through team meetings where health and safety has to be included, also through personal development reviews. Health and safety compliance is part, it's embedded, embedded within, but we obviously want to strive to do it so it's on day-to-day decision making on a day-to-day basis. The health and safety objectives, we've got 7 objectives, and the whole ethos is really trying to make safe by nature and improving together. So we are very, very much trying to give it a big drive to say, look, health and safety should be embedded into day-to-day business. And that's the key message that we want, really, the health and safety day-to-day business. And it's everybody's responsibilities, right from yourselves as elected members, right the way through to employees as well, through everyday management. Also, the communication plan, quite simply what we're doing as far as communicating the safety policy statement is to make sure that it's brought to everybody's attention. This will be done electronically, obviously for cost saving rather than a hard copy in the first point of contact. However, if somebody is not on email, for example, or haven't got access to a computer, then a hard copy will be made available. And it should be subject to talkback as well.
Thank you, Sue. Questions, comments? Vice Chair?
Thanks, Chair. I can remember this coming up a few years ago under the Health and Safety Subcommittee, and obviously we'll try to look at improvements through health and safety. I have to commend this report. I have to commend the actual health and safety policy. It's been through a lot of communication and involvement of certainly the Health and Safety Committee, the subcommittee, the trade unions, employees. I mean, the local authority health and safety policy is in itself a very hard thing to put in place because of the culture and the diversity of where people actually work and what they actually do. It's not like a blue chip company in one site, for instance, where it's easy to understand and implement the health and safety policy. I think from my perspective, the health and safety background, I think it's probably the best one I've seen in a local authority sense, and I'm looking forward to getting it implemented. Of course, the safety culture is something that we need to work on all the time, because as Sue says, it's about getting everybody involved in their responsibilities and, to that matter, their duties within the health and safety context. So I think this is a great step forward within the policy of the council, and look forward to it being implemented, Chair.
Thanks very much indeed, Vice Chair, for your positive and constructive remarks, and particularly given your professional background. That is extremely helpful. Colleagues, any further comments, questions? Nope. Okay. Yes, please.
I do apologise. It's actually about the communication plan at the back, and I do believe there's potentially one other thing that could help the implementation, and that's getting team leaders to actually do their job as toolbox talks of the health and safety policy at the end of the day.
Chairman, can I maybe acknowledge what the Vice Chair's saying? When we started the review of health and safety across the council, because of quite a bad record that we had, that was one of the issues that was first raised, was toolbox talks. It is my understanding that they now happen.
Yes, it's implicit within the corporate policy. It's included within the policy that each line manager must have team meetings or toolbox talks. Also within the communication of the safety policy itself, it will be part of Talkback, which is the corporate communications plan. It is also included within departmental health and safety plan and the service health and safety plan, which they have to report on through performance reporting as well.
These also help save the council, sorry Chairman, they help save the council money in that the men now know which job they're going to, so they take the right kit with them.
Yes, indeed. Councillor Witts.
Thank you, Chair. The very last item on the report, all council new starts, page 94, council induction. Could I have indication of what is involved in council induction for new starts?
It does depend on the person on the job. There's various different layers, if you like. There's within the corporate health and safety manual, there is an actual checklist that we give to managers as a template for what should be included generally in induction, and there's also a toolbox talk as well within the available as well. Also, depending on the actual place that they work and the activity that they do, that should also be subject to a specific checklist that's relevant to the job as well. So it's different layers depending on the corporately, also as far as the department and also the local job factors as well.
You wish to come back?
Thanks. So, basically what you're saying, are people talked through this? I mean, they're told you must familiarise yourself with this checklist, and I mean, I presume there's not a formal test, but obviously you'll want to make sure that people are internalising what's been given to them.
Yes, basically the requirement on every line manager to do that with their staff when they first recruit, yes. And also the actual safety policy statement is referred to them, and they have to, it's included within the corporate induction checklist, this document.
Mr. Haswell, do you have anything to add to Sue's response?
Obviously, induction depends what job you're going to be doing. We are looking at our induction programme, because it's a bit much if you send a chief officer to be inducted into something along with junior staff. So we are looking at that. But we do have a very good e-learning system, and I think Sue's got several modules on the e-learning system specifically relating to health and safety. So staff can go onto the computer themselves and be self-taught, and it is regularly checked to see that staff do use it, and there is the e-learning system in place.
I'm grateful for your response, Mr. Haswell. I'd have to be honest and say that I don't necessarily agree with your comment about sort of chief officers being sent, for induction with junior staff. I think if you run really democratic models, which I understand is the Japanese model in industry, that's one of the reasons why they're so successful. Vice Chair, you obviously...
I'll apologise for that.
I was going to say, sir, that some chief officers need to go into the induction to understand what their employees are actually doing at times.
Yes, I think we'll perhaps draw a veil over that issue. That wasn't the object of the exercise. No further comments, no further questions for Sue on the basis of the report. Well, can we turn then to the recommendations? And we're being asked, firstly, to agree the communication plan, I beg your pardon, to note and agree the dissemination of the revised corporate general health and safety policy at Appendix 1 in the report, and secondly, to agree the communication plan for issuing and the general health and safety policy as detailed in Appendix 2. And I wonder, colleagues, given the Vice Chair's endorsement of that, if we can perhaps maybe beef that up a wee bit, for want of a better term, because I think, you know, it's place on record our appreciation of the amount of work and time and effort which has obviously been put into this by Sue and her colleagues. And I would like to see that recognised in the minutes with your agreement, of course. Okay, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Next report is item number 9. This is a report, again, it's an internal audits reports which have been issued. Report with the Director of Chief Executive Service. It's a standing item on the agenda of this committee to allow members to discuss reports which are issued by our internal audit unit. The report highlights that 2 main financial systems reports, 1 departmental systems audit report, a risk management audit report and 1 school audit report have been finalised since the last meeting. These being, firstly, pensions administration, secondly, payroll and HR resources system, thirdly, income control at the ICE Bowl, fourthly, data protection, risk management and social work services, and fifth, lastly, Castle Douglas High School Fund report. The individual reports have been circulated to members under separate cover, and I'll ask Kevin Geraghty to take us through each of the reports. Kevin, do you have anything to add to each of these at this stage? No, okay. Well, can I ask you then, please, if we take them in sequence? So we'll start off with the first one, which is pensions administration. Anyone, any comments, Vice Chair?
Just on the agreed action plan, Kevin, and it's a third lack of evidence of completeness checks on pension increase in payment should be retained inside of. Are you happy at the level of the ranking of that? Because it is important to ensure that these are signed off properly.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, I think so. The categorisation, it's always worth spending time from time to time discussing the sort of categorisation of recommendations. There aren't any ones in this because basically we feel the administration of the pensions are done very well. This is something that it's a technicality, if you like. It's evidence that something has happened. We didn't find any problems in this area, but it's a question of, well, look, you do need to be more diligent about retaining evidence of internal check. So a category 3 is I think, most appropriate. There's a fine line sometimes between 3 and 2. So officially, a 3 is a good practice recommendation, which implies perhaps that there's some right not to do it. In practice, interestingly, we find that category 3 recommendations are usually done first, almost always done on time, and sometimes done early, which I find psychologically quite interesting. You know, one would have thought category 1s would be what people focused on, but often it's because a category 3 can be done. It's a good practice thing that people are happy to do, and it gives them a feeling that, you know, they're achieving something. So I have to confess, sometimes we're sneaky, and we'll put something as a 3 that could be a 2, but the reason is because it might motivate people to do it if it's a 3.
Okay, you wish to come back, Vice Chair? No. Okay, any other members, any questions on this particular report? If no one else has, I would raise one with you, Kevin. It's the bottom of page 8, where it talks about pensions. The last paragraph, 5.12.2, we were talking about pensions admin completed exercise in April 2013, but no evidence was retained as it was completed online. That's a wee bit, albeit I'll preface my remarks, I was going to say, it's just a bit concerning to a Luddite such as myself. Any further comments, or do you wish to amplify that or to respond to that?
I think really we're saying we can't say anything more than that on the NFI because there wasn't anything for us to look at as such. I'm sure members will remember that pensions, NFI, well, an exercise a number of years ago identified probably the largest fraud that had taken place at the council for a significant number of years. It was in connection with a pension continuing to be drawn after the death of the pensioner by a family member, and that was picked up through an NFI exercise, and that the person involved in that was in fact prosecuted and very heavily fined, and they had to reinstate the money that had been stolen. So that was a few years back. Now, we haven't had anything like that for a few years through the NFI, and it really is, it demonstrates the effectiveness of the NFI exercise and its value to the council. There is a lot of work involved in it, but there is a sort of, there is a process where the council is given what are called matches and asked to look at those and in fact to evaluate those, and then it needs to report on any findings that emerge from that. And so it is looked at by, it's coordinated by Audit Scotland. So although it sounds as if it's a bit blasé and it's a bit optional, I think the council's experience with NFI over the years is such that it understands it's well worth doing and that value has emerged from the work. So although it's challenging to do and it always comes at an awkward time, we're satisfied that particularly the pensions section with their recent experience take this work very seriously. So we didn't have any concerns about it.
Okay, thanks very much. No other questions or comments on this particular report? Well, can we move on then to the next report, which is Internal Audit, main financial systems report in relation to payroll and HR systems. Any members, any comments, points, issues? Yes, indeed, Vice Chair.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the area where somebody gets employed with the council and then a couple of years later they then get another part-time job with the council. We've seen this in the pension scheme where there's been, did you find any issues in that particular respect, apart from the pension issue, of course, that we've talked about before? Have you found any issues in that respect?
The system has some difficulties with multiple placements, people holding multiple jobs, and we see sort of some problems, well, some operational challenges emerging from that, and one that's referenced in the report is to do with, I think was it increments, where we said there was an automatic process for doing increments on the system. iTrent has an automatic process, but a review of using that system threw up that it would be very complex for people holding multiple positions. There are certain categories of staff, where it's very common for there to be multiple positions held. This system is a lot better than the previous one. The system that it replaced really couldn't handle multiple positions at all well. This one is better, but it's still not fantastic. But it's not, overall, it's not a problem. There's more work involved, should we say, as a result of people with multiple positions. But I think we're satisfied that the way it's done and the way it's administered, whilst it involves more work and generates more work, it is effective. So we have no concerns about that.
So if I remember right, in the last pension, there's work ongoing to ensure that this is sorted out and hopefully get an improved service to the individual. Yeah.
Okay, no, Councillor McKee.
Yeah, just seek clarity on that. Are you talking about somebody that's got 3 separate jobs within the council at one time? Now, if that's the case, they've got one national insurance number. Surely to goodness, in this day of modern technology, that could be picked up between your system. Well, they're on the same system, aren't they? They're on the pay system. How the devil can it not identify the person through that?
No, it can. I mean, we know where people hold multiple positions, but the way the system works, it's an HR and payroll system. So there's an HR database which in effect feeds the payroll side of things. So, and on the HR system, we use in effect establishment. So a person can be 0.6 in this job and they can hold another job and be a 0.2 in another job. That can be a different department. It can, occasionally even be across different payrolls. That's less of a problem now as we've consolidated payrolls. But in the past, we could have somebody on 3 different payrolls, for instance, depending on the nature of their work. So on a day-to-day basis, it's not too much of a problem. NI is calculated properly, tax is calculated properly, all those sorts of things are done okay. Some things become more complicated as a result of multiple positioning. And for instance, we had for years, we were doing a calculation. If a term time only member of staff left out of sync, away from the 15th of August, There were back calculations done to adjust their pay in relation to the total amount of leave they'd taken. And when they've got multiple positions, that becomes monstrously complicated, really hard to do. But that was a point we made when we did the audit, the payroll audit 3 years ago, that they needed to sort that out. And very recently, it's come to a conclusion that we won't adjust for these when a person leaves, should we say, other than the normal calculation. There was an extra calculation done. And that has taken away an awful lot of problems because it involved a manual calculation, so it was quite intensive to do it. And there was a higher risk with it that an error would be made. If we just let the system do the calculation, which has been the recent decision, things are a lot simpler and there's less risk of error and that sort of thing. So people with multiple positions, you know, we have to accept, I think, that happens for some people, and that's their preference, that's the way that they like to you know, and the council's quite happy to accommodate that. The payroll system can handle it. There's more work involved usually around some issues, but it can handle it and it does everything correctly for multiple position people.
Okay, any other comments in relation to this report? Right, can we move to the next one then, please? Which is the review of income control at Dumfries Ice Bowl. Very topical subject at the moment. Sorry, Vice Chair, do you want to come back? Okay, right. Kevin, you have nothing further to add to this report, right, Vice Chair?
Now, again, I'm looking at the agreed action plan, which talks about cash could be stolen and a daily check of £500 float will be undertaken. And then I look at 5.11.4, which had audit checked the 3 floats in the safe were correct, the £250 floats were correct, but the 500 float was £39.90 short. And checks were later made by staff, but they couldn't find the reason for the discrepancy. It's been suggested to audit there may have been a mistake when given change. Now, looking at the potential of that in this day and age where cash could be stolen, and I can understand about time implications and that type of thing. I think 2 checks should be done, once in the morning and once at night, and then potentially a floating check for sometime during the day as well. I'm not happy with the actual action that the daily check or the 500 float should, because this is like, you know, a potential for not only members of staff stealing, but members of the public stealing as well.
The float itself is secure. It's kept in the safe, so there's a very low risk, I think, of if somebody was foolish enough to leave a bag of money on the counter, somebody obviously walking past could pick it up, and then it would be quite difficult to identify who that was. But the risk of that is extremely low. Our concern sits around the fact that, look, the procedures within the ice bowl are for a daily check. During the shutdown period, this didn't happen, and when we did a simple straight count on the change float, it was short. And, you know, that's annoying. It's annoying for us. It's annoying for management to have discovered that, and it will be very difficult to identify when exactly it went, because it turns out the float hadn't been counted for a period of time. So all we were doing really was saying to management, look, reinforce this, make absolutely sure that you do the daily checks, that there's a proper handover, there's an acknowledgement that the right amount of money is in the float, has been retained in the float. And you know, the practice was there, it had just fallen into abeyance during the shutdown period over the summer. But that needs to be done every day, whether the facility is in full operation or not. I think we're happy. I mean, we were assured that the checks do take place in normal operations, and their explanation of how it might have happened was a bit weak. The possibility that too much change had been given to the cafe, for instance, sounded to us to be a bit thin, but it was a rather desperate attempt to sort of say, well, we're not sure what's happened, it could have been this. But very difficult to identify. It's a funny amount to go, you know, you'd think if somebody was pinching it, they'd take the whole lot. But, you know, so there could have been an error somewhere along the way. We have to admit to that as a possibility.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. I've raised this question in the past at the Audit Committee. Obviously, we mentioned Archie's raised a few valid points. The till system as well. You have a number of vending machines in the ice bowl and that, and I'm concerned about the stock control and the cash. There's no accounting of there showing what's happening there. Are they checked on a daily basis or a monthly basis? It's quite a serious issue, and it's any business you run, even a shop, you have a stock control, cash basis, you're checking on a daily basis. I think there's a loophole in here. I'm very concerned about this vending machines, and I've always said that a local contractor should be doing this, and it takes the risk off the council. There's serious risk here with theft and accountancy I'm concerned about this, and it's never been identified. I've identified this in the past, and I've still got concerns about it.
Yes, I'm happy to comment that. I would agree with Councillor Bell that vending machine operations are more complex, they're more involved, and there's an element of sophistication involved in controlling money through vending machines that is beyond perhaps the routine and the normal. You do need special measures. It's a special risk area. I would agree with that. I don't think it's, perhaps Councillor Bell's forgotten, he identified this to us previously in relation to DG1, and we did a blitz exercise. There was something like 8 or 9 machines in operation at DG1, and we sent the whole team over one day. We did, in effect, a full stock check and full cash count against those machines. Now, whilst there were some operational improvements that we sought to make, we did not find the kind of problem that Councillor Bell is concerned about, i.e. the shortages in stock or shortages in cash. So I would agree that in the normal course of events, a thoroughly structured and organised vending machine operation is a complex affair. In practice, what we found at the DG1 exercise was that it was working okay. So we currently don't have vending machines as a high risk area, and we could do the same. We could go down to the ice bowl and do a blitz on it, in effect it's a stock check and have a look at that. But at the moment it's not warranted, but it is something that I retain in my mind when looking at work to do, and I'm quite happy to perhaps elevate it slightly and start to say, well, perhaps we should do a few more of these, because I think Councillor Bell is right to point out it's a risk area, it's a higher risk area than normal.
Thanks, Chair.
You wish to come back?
Thanks, Chair. I think you should actually investigate the ice bowl. I'm quite concerned. I've been raised with a number of users there, and I think it needs to be done. But the one way taking a complete risk off the council on all these vending machines would be to enter an agreement with a local contractor over a period of time, like a trial project, and then we can benchmark it against the council's in-house procedures.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily appropriate for you to respond to that, because it seems to me that there's another issue behind that. Yes, fine, fair enough. That I have no problems with that. But as I say, I think it's got to be taken and developed in the appropriate fashion. We'll come back to that. Summing up on this item with your leave, Councillor Bell.
I'm sure that can maybe be discussed at Community Service Committee put forward sometime.
Thank you. That's helpful, Councillor Witts.
Thank you. I'm looking at action point 2 and how insurance won't pay out if someone breaking into premises accesses a safe key which has been left on the property out with business hours. It seems to me this is a no-brainer. Surely certain people or employees should be designated key holders, and I appreciate that people work different shifts and you wouldn't want a duplication of keys, too many keys, but if certain people were named as key holders and they just basically took the keys home with them, surely that would mean that if the premises were broken into and the safe was opened, insurance would pay out. But if the keys are left on the premises, insurance will not pay out. So why are these keys left on the premises in the first place? Obviously, it's probably ease of handing over when somebody finishes one shift and somebody else starts, but it's really a very risky procedure to leave the keys on the premises in the first place.
Happy to comment, Chair. You'll see this in a number of audit reports, particularly this sort of exercise, income control. Unfortunately, it is the case that we meet a degree of resistance on this. To us as well, we consider that, look, management should make arrangements to have the right number of keys for people to be able to take them home, so that if they're not on shift the next morning, somebody else turns up with the key, all that sort of stuff. There does seem to be a reluctance, and I think it emerges from a concern at operational level, at staff level, as to, look, they don't want to take safe keys home. They feel exposed and at risk and these sort of things. We've had arguments in the past about, there only is one key, and we've said, look, we'll get more cut and these sort of things. It's a perennial problem. I have to say, we have never yet, to my knowledge, had a claim refused by the insurance company on these grounds. So it does remain a possibility. But I have to say, likelihood, if you're doing a risk matrix on this, I couldn't do anything other than put likelihood as extremely unlikely for this problem to emerge. But it's something that we point out to services is to try and encourage them to develop proper and appropriate arrangements for safe key handling and so on. So we kind of, it's almost a standard to put it in. We do find some places have got good arrangements where they've got arrangements for keys to be taken home, but other services, the staff are quite reluctant to do so. And this is one of these areas where we've raised this in the past, but staff have said, well, you know, we have reservations about that. And particularly where you're working in a shift type system where there are different shifts coming on, you know, the facility here is open across quite an extended period across the day, so there's a number of shifts work across it. So we find it sometimes difficult to persuade management to you know, accept that risk or to deal with that risk, because they balance it, which they're entitled to do, in terms of saying, well, there are too many complications arising from that. So you'll see it in a number of reports. We always point it out to management, and we always try and make sure they understand that they're holding a risk if they don't deal with it properly.
Okay, thank you. Right, no further comments on this particular report. Can we proceed then to the next one, which is the number 4, Internal Audit Report, Review of Data Protection Risk Management for the Social Work Service. Kevin, anything to add to what has been circulated? Right, colleagues, comments, questions? Vice Chair.
Obviously, it's a really important thing for the actual corporate business risk as well when we talk about data protection and things like that. And I notice on the agreed action plan, there's 5 level ranking 1s action plans. And have you any idea how far along we are with that action plan at the moment, Kevin? Because I know there was a lot of work going on within social work department to get this sorted.
Yes, this is a good example of a report where we do have more ones than we might typically expect. It's not because they're bad, it's because this is a high priority area. And so we're very much saying, look, you know, this needs to be done. In effect, we're putting some pressure on the service. But in agreeing this report, the report's only recently been agreed with the service, and I'm absolutely confident that the service will deal with these things. They've been very collaborative and helpful with us in the sense of being interested in the results and accepting the findings and working with us to try and develop solutions for them. So the ones are there really to provide some steel, you know, behind a management approach. So it's very early stages, or it's relatively early stages in relation to this audit action plan. You'll see the dates are sort of August 14, sort of the earliest dates in there, because we need to give them enough time to develop the appropriate solutions. But as I say, I'm quite, you know, we're confident, we're quite pleased with their reaction and their response to this report. It was quite positive.
Can I raise a couple of points in relation to the page 2, the box, it's third from the bottom, which says social workers not being aware of the revised procedures. Now, a couple of points I would make there. It seems to me, and I've discussed this, I've got to be honest to say, with the chair of the Social Work Committee, and his view, he tended to agree with me that this was a somewhat protracted process, you know, when you're talking about April 2015. And in addition, we both came to the conclusion that perhaps it's not only social work staff who are required to undergo this training, but, you know, all staff in the department, because, you know, staff other than, you know, professionally qualified social work staff, you know, have access to, you know, to this information, etc. So that, as I say, did you have any response to that? Did these thoughts occur to you, or do you have any take on that?
Yes, I mean, April 15 was a realistic deadline. They can do it early, which would be great if they're able to do it. It will be applicable in other services. Bear in mind that all services are going to receive a similar audit over the next 3 years in total. Currently, Education Department is being looked at, so there'll be a second report coming forward on them. Now, if we begin to get a theme out of this work, we'd escalate it in effect to the corporate director to sort of say, well, look, it's quite clear that there's an across-the-board requirement here. This emerged from fairly specific, this sort of social work special risks that exist and the special requirements that operate in relation to social work record keeping, and in particular client records, you know, those sorts of things. So if you like, this is the start of something. It may well turn into something, as you say, that appertains across the whole of the organisation and will be better being dealt with in that way. But we'll start with this one and sort of see how it goes.
Thank you. Any other comments or responses, questions, etc.? No? Okay, can we move on to the next report then, which is the Internal Audit Report on the operation of the Castle Douglas High School Fund.
Chair, will he be queried if I leave now? Or are he struggling?
I'll look to you for guidance, Lucy, but my understanding is that we would still be quoted with 4 members.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry I have to leave early, but another appointment up the road.
Appreciate
and
that.
by the way, the girls got the bronze medal.
Sorry? Absolutely marvellous. Well done. Well, yes indeed. It could have been a gold though, Jock. Forgive me. I don't believe in the Corinthian ideal of taking part. It's all about winning. Operation of Castle Douglas High School Fund. You don't have anything further to add to that report, Kevin? No? Okay, colleagues, any questions, comments, points to make? Right. Well, on that basis, can we go back to the body of the report and turn to the recommendations? We're being asked to note and comment on the internal audit reports which have been finalised. We've done that. We've noted the contents of these reports together with the comments that we've made. We're of the view that the contents of the report and the comments, amplification in the comments, have given us the level of assurance that we need as a committee. Would that be acceptable, colleagues? Okay. One point I would like to raise on the back of it, and we've discussed it, I think the Vice Chair, myself and Mr Haswell and Kevin have discussed it from time to time in the past, and it's not, before I go any further, Kevin, let me make it abundantly clear, it's not a criticism of you or your professionalism. There is an issue here though. I feel that, you know, maybe I'm harking back to my previous tenure of my previous involvement in the Scrutiny Committee. I think, you know, perhaps in certain circumstances it would be justified having members of staff along from the individual departments concerned. And that's not a criticism of your ability to answer, but I think, you know, apart from anything else, you know, getting a dissemination of the views of the committee and the feeling of the committee fed back to the departments concerned would be helpful. I mean, for instance, we're talking there, I raised a question about social work, Councillor Bell raised a question, you know, about sort of, you know, the practices, etc., and the Ice Bowl and DGFirst. And I'm not going to ask today, colleagues, that we make policy in the hoof, but can I flag it up, Kevin, and you can perhaps maybe give us a considered report on the pros and the cons of continuing with the current modus operandi, for want of a better term, as against perhaps a suggestion along these lines. We don't want the world and his wife sitting in the members' lounge, you know, sort of, albeit they can quite reasonably hot desk, but, you know, as I say, it would be worthwhile having a look at the possibility of maybe changing our method of operation somewhat to see, in fact, if we can get more effectiveness as a consequence. It's offered, as I say, as a suggestion. I take it, well, you might not agree with me. What's your views on it, Vice Chair?
Yeah, I would be happy for a report to come back at a later stage on that particular thing. And the reason why I think it's really important, and you mentioned it within your preamble there, I think it's important that people see when they do a good job that they get, you know, that credit for that particular good job as well. It increases, you know, the morale in a particular area, and actually might save us some money in the long run.
So that would be acceptable, colleagues. Okay, Kevin, yes, please.
Chair, if I can just comment. Yes, I think this is the committee should look to itself and look to develop itself and its approaches to things. If you have a look at paragraph 3.7 in the covering report, sorry, that's the wrong curse. Sorry. Have a look at 3.5 in the covering report. That's on page 95 at the bottom. In effect, what I'm saying to you is when you're looking at these reports, you have a number of functions to do. And, you know, one of them, at least, is the effectiveness of the audit report. Another is the adequacy of the managerial response and so on. So it does tend to suggest that there will be occasions when I think you could benefit from having a representative from the service. And as you say, that may not be for all reports. So I'll have a look at the options, if you like, for you and come back to you and make some suggestions.
That would be very helpful indeed, and I'm obliged to you for your assistance. Thank you. Moving on then to item number 10. Again, this is a performance It's a quarterly update to allow the committee to assure itself that control issues reported by internal audit previously have been addressed by management in an appropriate and timely manner to ensure that the risk to that unimplemented audit recommendations don't increase business risks and that the scrutiny of outcomes reduces this likelihood. Members have been provided with a copy of each of the internal audit reports when published. The attached tracking report details progress in implementing internal audit recommendations, with only one report, that's debt control and social work services, remaining open for the next quarterly monitoring report. All in all, a good outcome, I would suggest. Do you have anything further to add to the report, Kevin? Okay, sir. Colleagues, any questions, any points you wish to raise? Vice Chair.
Chair, I would agree with you. It's a good report in looking at the completion of this, but we are an Audit and Risk Committee at the end of the day, and there are some actions or recommendations from the audit officer that perhaps we might want to follow up at a later date, in particular on the social work, the debt control and social work department. I know there's a report going to social work department on how they get the debt sorted out. I'm just wondering if once that report has been agreed, that in that particular action, if we can have a report back here to make sure that it's actually working, and if we've got any further recommendations back to the social work services, we can actually do that.
Kevin?
I'm quite happy to accept that suggestion, Chair, yes, and come back to you on it. Okay.
Thank you. That's very helpful indeed. Thanks for raising it, Vice Chair. Okay, well, if there are no other comments or questions on that particular aspect of it, can we go to the recommendation? We're being asked to note and comment on the progress which has been made. We've done so. We've placed on record our satisfaction of the progress. There's only one of these reports which is still open, and if we can incorporate the suggestion which has been made by the Vice Chair and accepted by Kevin into the note of the decision, Lucy, that would be helpful indeed. Okay. Then moving on to the next item, item number 11. This is the 9 months progress report against the 2013-14 Internal Audit Plan. It's a report by the Director of Chief Executive Services. The audit team operates to a plan agreed at the beginning of each financial year, which is approved by this committee. This report updates the committee on the progress being made by internal audit against the plan after 9 months. The appendix lists the actual time spent in each area of work against the annual planned times and the remaining balance. During the third quarter, the team largely concentrated on main financial systems audit work. However, the audit plan has also come under pressure as a result of increased demand from unplanned work. There have been further requirements in respect of unplanned audit work, and members are going to be asked, once we've heard from Kevin, to formally approve the deletion of the review of improvement activity and the use of the change fund, because project scoping has suggested that there are no concerns about the way the programme is being controlled. On that basis, Kevin, do you have anything further to add to the report at this stage? Okay, sir. Colleagues, over to, I'll open it up for member debate. Vice Chair.
Chair, I'm just looking at the amount of days. I mean, 60 days for unplanned audit work. So that's a lot of unplanned audit work that's actually going on. I'm just wondering, I can understand why it's been done, Kevin, but 60 days is a long time for unplanned stuff. We need to make sure in our audit and risk plan that you've got the appropriate time needed to do the work that we as a committee need you to do, basically, So I'm just wondering if there's something we can help in that respect. So we're coming up with a plan at the next June meeting, I think it is. But is there something in the meantime you could suggest to us that would help better utilise your time as opposed to unplanned work?
Yeah, this is, my directors are laughing, and well may he. Audit, by tradition, always, things pop up, let's put it that way, and there are choices about where that goes. But equally, there are choices about whether I let us be involved in things. So representations are frequently made to us to say, could we do X or could we do Y? And I'm in a strong position to say no. If there's no audit dimension to something, I turn it down flat. If there is an audit dimension to it, it's then a consideration of, well, how is this going to impact on the plan, the very point that the Vice Chair is making. And some of these things become wars of attrition You know, there's very rarely a sort of clean run in and a clean run out and things. Sometimes they dribble on for ages. So the contingency that we put in the plan, standard 20 days, is quite modest by comparison with some of the central belt authorities who basically, you know, a very large chunk of their work every year is involved in irregular and unplanned work. So there's a message in putting 20 days in. I'm saying, you know, as far as possible, I don't want to be doing this. But there are occasions when I feel professionally bound to support the council with some of this work. And it's very unfortunate this year we seem to have had a few more than on previous occasions. It comes and goes. Some years, actually, we don't even use the 20 days. But this year has been a particularly exciting year in terms of things being brought to audit and us being asked for our assistance. Now, as I say, I have the right to turn it down. If I think it compromises the plan, that's my sort of first consideration. And secondly, is there merit in audit doing it? You know, is it our skill set, or does it have potential additional interest for us in relation to our risk assessments and these sorts of things? So it's a bit kind of difficult. It must be tempting for my senior colleagues to sort of who look at audit and think, oh, they ain't doing very much, so we'll get them to do it. But as I say, I'm well supported. I know I'm well supported by the committee. I do know that if I have a problem and I'm being put under pressure, I can come to the committee and talk about it, come to the chair and talk about it. Also, my director is very sympathetic on this. He does listen. If I say I cannot do this, he generally will accept that as a position. But we're here to serve the council. You know, we're nothing if we don't help the council achieve its objectives. So I professionally, I feel bound on occasion to agree to some of these things. And we're good at some of them as well. So you know, we do a good job in as least time as possible. In terms of what can the committee do to support me, more of what you're doing at the moment, which is to say, you know, to draw lines and say, this is how we're to operate. We're not available to be raided or pressured, and we have an obligation to deliver as far as possible the plan, and we're held accountable for that. So that helps us maintain our position.
Mr. Haswell, I feel that you might wish to respond to.
At the risk, and I don't want to appear flippant, Chairman, but I thought Kevin was going to say, get rid of Alec Haswell, because I think I've been the source of many of the 60 days, not all of them I hope, but some of the 60 days. I respect fully the professionalism of Kevin and his team. I respect their right, and members do approve a plan, and members have an input into the plan. I think there have been a number of issues which have arisen over the last 12 months, Kevin, which you would acknowledge. You yourself have said, yeah, I really need to look at that. Kevin and I have a very robust and good working relationship, so.
No further comments? No? Perhaps, can I put it to you, Kevin, we needed to save 60 days. You've come up with proposals which do. You're not making a virtue of necessity, are you?
No, Chair, I think that's a fair question. I think you're right to push on this and to be satisfied that I'm not just bending. We have got the Change Fund. I was convinced there was something in the Change Fund issue. I've spent a couple of months trying to dig that issue out, and it's just not there. There isn't an issue there. We suggested we should be looking at it and making sure the Change Fund is being used appropriately, it's delivering what's required out of it. There are pretty good processes in place for dealing with that. And the other one was a slight oddity. We were asked to include it. It was a very modest amount of time, 15 days, with an undefined objective. And that objective remains still very undefined. And on that basis, it's, you know, I can't keep holding that time aside while we try and figure out what we're going to do with that time. I've got other pressures on the plan. So there's no, it doesn't affect the plan in any critical way, I think, to delete those two from the existing plan.
I'm grateful to you, Kevin, for your response, and also assured by your response. I really am. Well, as far as I'm concerned, sorry, I beg your pardon. We turn to the recommendations. We've been asked to note and comment on the progress being made towards the completion of the sorry, Councillor Witts, my apologies. That's okay. Please, come on. No apologies necessary.
Just a quick one regarding it must be very difficult when you look at the appendix to estimate what is needed in terms of days planned, and but two do stick out quite strongly. The one is the plan as sick and medical absence planned, 23 days and days actual, 2.0. Another one is the use of the change fund, 25.0 planned, actual 0.0. That makes the variances, although not the greatest variances, possibly the greatest in terms of percentage vis-a-vis the difference between planned and actual. Would you care to comment on that?
Briefly, Chair, the sickness absence, yes, is done on a calculator. It's just a formula. I'm pleased to say that over the years, we've never achieved the level of sickness that's been in the plan. We've had one year where we had a member of staff unfortunately off for a couple of weeks, and that takes a big chunk out of it. So, I mean, it's to the team's credit that the level of sickness absence is quite low. And the very point that you're making about the change fund, that's why we're proposing to drop that audit, because we've booked no time against it so far. And as I say, I cannot find a piece of work to do in it. So the fact that there's 25 days in the plan and we're going to delete that and in effect transfer that to unplanned work, I think is, you know, that's the reality of the situation.
Vice Chair?
It reminds me, Chair, of something in the Health and Safety Action Plan where last year we had 23 injuries and we've got a target of reducing that to 12. I actually think we should be reducing it to 0, like, you know, as a target, but, you know, a target of 23 days of sickness absence is, you know, it should be 0.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair comment. Right. No other comments, no other questions. Firstly, we're being asked to note and comment on the progress being made towards completion of the internal audit plan as detailed in the appendix. We've done so. And secondly, we're being asked to approve the deletion of the improvement activity retrospective and the use of change fund projects from the 2013-14 internal audit plan in recognition of increased time requirements from unplanned audit work. Are we prepared, colleagues, to adopt these recommendations? Okay, thank you. Well, thanks very much indeed. I don't have any further business, so I thank you all for your attendance and your input. And I hope, Tony, you didn't find it too cold. I nearly adjourned the meeting to give you a chance, you know, to sort of get a jacket. But as I say, and I hope you found it worthwhile. Thank you. Thanks very much indeed to you all.